Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Some of you again. Extra points for those who were here at last month's Visual Studio webinar. Thanks for joining us today for our update webinar, What's New, What's Next? My name is Rachel Gibson. I am the Director of Sales and Marketing at Synergex. Please note that this session is being recorded. We have 4 topics to present to you and 4 speakers to present them. So first is Marty Lewis, a software development manager, and he's going to share an update on our Synergy DE products. Then Director of Software Development, Tim Baugess, will talk about SDI, our Synergy integration for Visual Studio. Then Jeff Greene, our Chief Technology Officer, will discuss Harmony Core and provide some interesting info on some things he's doing with Apache's Kafka. Then finally, our developer support team lead, Phil Bratt, will share some updates about our developer support. After the presentation, we'll return to answer some of your questions, and I'll also provide an update on an upcoming conference news. So feel free to type some questions into the chat during the presentation, and note that we'll address those at the end. And now it is my pleasure to turn things over to Marty.
Thanks, Rachel. It's great to be kicking things off with the core of the language and runtime, Synergy DE. We'll start with what's already released in Synergy DE 12.2, and in case you have not been watching, we actually released the first 12.2 feature release back in November of 2022 with build 1003. That first version of 12.2 included a number of important product enhancements, starting with the ability to order by on the result of joins when using the select class. This feature works with both traditional Synergy and Synergy.net. It provides new ways to handle your data and opens up new possibilities for optimizing your select operations. A major target for this functionality is Harmony Core, where join tables are used extensively, so this seemed like a great enhancement for both your code and to open up new functionality in Harmony Core. Supporting order by on join required that we be able to realize the results of the join operations and have a way to store, manipulate, and present that data. Out of that need was born support for static cursors that were also implemented into functionality that you can use. A static cursor allows you to retrieve an immutable snapshot of data where all of the I/O has been done up front. So your join select operations with group by or order by will pay the I/O cost up front and provide you an immutable data set that can be iterated as you see fit. We strongly advise that you control which fields that you need so that you do not use too much memory. But if you need tighter controls over memory, there is also a syncell_cursor mem environment variable to give you that control. It is notable that both these features are supported both locally and over XF Server, but your XF Server must be version 12.2 or greater. The 1003 build also introduced our initial support for .NET 6, but we'll get into that more later. On the language side, we finally added support for inline variable declaration of your iterator on for each loops. This is a feature that I've wanted forever, and will remove some of the clunkiness from the for each syntax. In between the 1003 and 1006 builds, we also released a few language enhancements over on the SDI side with support for the new static abstract interface members and required property modifiers in .NET 6. Our goal with adopting new .NET language features is to ensure the best compatibility with other languages and libraries, and these were definitely some required additions. Moving on to the 1007 build, we introduced full platform support for Synergy.NET 6 on Linux. This was a major milestone for our team that forced us to take a step back and consider what it means to target .NET Framework versus targeting .NET 6 and greater. It seemed to us that the most useful way to present Synergy.NET on Linux is to follow Microsoft's de-emphasis on UI and lean into the existing terminal-based approach that you are used to on that platform. As a result, our .NET 6 implementation of low-level Windows and Toolkit is the Unix-style terminal interface rather than the pseudo-WinForm style that you get when working with .NET Framework on Windows. That's not limited to Linux. We carried forward that vision onto Windows. So for the first time, you can build and run Synergy.net low-level Windows code that targets a terminal-first experience on Windows. If you already have existing .NET Framework code and rely on that WinForm style approach, you can still opt into it on Windows by targeting the Windows-specific versions of .NET 6 or .NET 8. We think this decision will provide the best avenue for you to adapt your existing applications to the .NET ecosystem and ease the transition of parts of your software to Synergy.net without breaking the existing look and feel. There are pages on the doc site that help break down what is different between the .NET offerings and explain how to target. Of note, the build tooling for .NET is still Windows only, so our expectation is that you will work in SDI on Windows to build and publish your .NET code regardless of the destination platform. Also in Build 1007, we introduced new ISUtil features for managing free space and file allocations. This is important when files receive significant amounts of write volume and start running into Windows file extent limitations. These features allow you to quickly and easily pre-allocate free space, either in specific amounts or percentage-based, to ensure that your file gets extended only a few times a month during your regular maintenance, instead of hundreds of thousands of times a day. The -EX switch lets you do file extensions, and the -B switch gives you ways to view your bucket usage so you can determine what your needs are. Docs readily available on synergex.com/docs. Switching over to Build 1008, we introduced support for OpenSSL 3.0 and 3.1 on Linux, Unix, and OpenVMS. This was an important update to ensure we are keeping up with current development in the OpenSSL space, especially with some of the older versions becoming deprecated. This is a great time for us and you to upgrade. We fixed a number of compatibility items, including adding support for PKCS number 8 private key format across supported platforms. Well, besides other bug fixes, that is most everything that we've already released in 12.2 in the last year. But we still have another release for you before the 12.2 series ends. So what's next? Well, we're starting with something that I know a number of you will like, with performance enhancements to the select class. We invested a big chunk of time into profiling and improving some common select usage patterns, and got some notably improved numbers. The value of these improvements goes up with the complexity of your expressions. So in a simple case of one key and one operator, it's only performing about 3% faster. But in a more complex 10 key and 6 operator expression, we saw improvements of up to 65%. And that is raw time for executing the select operations when compared to the latest release of 12.1. I think some people would ask that we port these changes to 12.1. I can already predict that question. While the perf improvements would be nice, we did classify this work as a feature to open up larger code changes on our end. It is very stable, but I would not want to chance any volatility back in a 12.1 LTS release. So please do try the next 12.2 build. Let us know the impact of the performance changes on your real-world select class usage, and look forward to having this in 12.3. But that's not all. Of course, last month, Microsoft released .NET 8 right before Thanksgiving. We set out to validate that our existing .NET 6 Synergy.net runtime would work for any customers that wanted to adopt .NET 8 sooner than later. And our testing showed us to be fully compatible on both Windows and Linux. However, we will still be shipping a runtime built with and targeting .NET 8. This transition should be seamless for any early adopters, just a NuGet package update and you should be up and running. This could still mean some additional language features. Our team is still working on evaluating need. We are also in the final stages of implementing some internal tooling improvements. We currently license and build our Linux software with the Intel Classic C++ compiler, which is reaching end of life. Fortunately, the Intel One API C++ compiler is almost a drop-in replacement that has also improved features for us, like better static code analysis, and a more forgiving license. Our goal with this change is for it to have no impact on your existing supported platforms. So we are doing a lot of validation to ensure no rogue glibc problems or anything like that. But I would still highly encourage all Linux customers to try this build on your individual Linux environments. This tooling change also enables us to broaden our build and test processes. So we have some goals to add more Linux distributions to our automated test environments. That leads right to the second line of DevOps improvements. The Synergy DE team has had a couple of growing pains with the 12.1 LTS releases alongside the 12.2 feature releases. We're eliminating bottlenecks in our processes to make it easier to test and release the versions simultaneously so bug fixes can get to you faster. Of course, all of these 12.2 versions lead us up to the next LTS release. I'm pleased to announce that we're targeting a late Q1 of 24 for our 12.3 LTS release. Between now and then, our goal is to keep the product as stable as possible. If you find issues in 12.2, please get them reported so we can make this an even better release. But we're not stopping there. After 12.3 goes out, we can start working on 12.4 features. Of course, these are all forward-looking statements. There's no guarantees of these features. But this is a rough look at the first couple of features that we're considering. You can also find these on our roadmap in case you're ever looking in the future. Based on previous customer feedback, we think that there's a fair amount of demand for ISAM improvements that work while files are in use. Top of the list is being able to change record length and add or remove keys while the file's in use. We have a general focus on eliminating downtime and enabling you to plan changes differently. There is also demand on the Synergy.net side for supporting thread local environment variables. Given the nature of a lot of Synergy programs, having environment blocks shared between threads can cause significant scaling or adoption issues. So we're looking into providing an optional level of isolation. We also have a number of other ISAM and other features near the top of the list, but I'm interested in hearing what features are most important to your organizations. So please, reach out to sales, support, myself, or our ideas forum, and let us know what would enable your software to grow. Okay, before I hand things off, I want to touch on version support really quickly because things have changed with the release of the LTS system to make it easier for you to plan your future updates. In September, we waved farewell to version 11 as it reached its end of support. With a known launch date for 12.3, we now know that the 12.1 LTS will have an end of support 4 years after its initial release, so ending in April of 2026. Version 12.2 is a fully supported version, but it will end support approximately 3 months after 12.3 ships. So we are anticipating 12.2 to have an end of support in Q2 of 24. And 12.3 releases soon, so it will have a minimum supported lifetime of 4 years, so you can plan on having support through Q1 of 2028 at the minimum. On the platform side, we recently retired AIX 7.1 in line with IBM retiring that platform. They are offering extended support contracts, but we are not. Please ensure that you are updating your AIX systems if that is a target for you. With that, I will conclude the Synergy DE update, and I hand you off to Tim Baugess for the SDI update.
Welcome to the Synergy DBL integration for Visual Studio product update. I'm Tim Baugess, Director of Software Development at Synergex. Today, I'm thrilled to share with you our latest advancements and the future roadmap for SDI. Let's jump in. First, we'll explore the latest enhancements in SDI. Let's start by focusing on the high-value maintenance initiatives that the team is doing. We've recently fully transitioned from Visual Studio 2019 to Visual Studio 2022 only. This is a significant step in providing an optimal developer experience with SDI. This move brings several key benefits. First of all, this shift enables us to streamline our processes, leading to quicker bug fixes, updates, and more efficient support. By focusing on a single Visual Studio version, we can dedicate more resources to enhancing your experience with SDI. Also, by focusing on Visual Studio 2022, we can fully utilize its 64-bit architecture, offering enhanced memory capabilities and performance advantages, ensuring our SDI extension is optimized for peak performance. Visual Studio 2022 also brings advanced capabilities that allows us to develop innovative features and solutions, catering to evolving developer needs. With Visual Studio 2022's significant architectural improvements over Visual Studio 2019, we ensure better stability and reliability for SDI, reducing any sort of compatibility issues. As Microsoft has also positioned Visual Studio 2022 as the primary development platform, this also ensures we're in step with industry standards and supported .NET versions. So like .NET 6 and above are Visual Studio 2022 only. In our commitment to modernization, we're phasing out Synergy, WPF, and WinForm support as well. This decision is not just about moving away from less used systems, but rather focusing our resources on areas that deliver the most value to our customers, just like Visual Studio 2022. This ensures that we stay ahead in a rapidly evolving technical landscape. Now let's talk about some diagnostics and analytics. We've implemented application insights telemetry to provide deeper insights into usage and performance. And again, that is, as I mentioned in our previous webinar, this is all anonymous. The data we collect ideally is just for metrics and aggregation. But if you do opt in, then we can collect some sort of usage analytics as well, although we do anonymize that as well. This is useful for providing support. Like if you reach out and provide your session ID, we can look it up. This is also useful for other cases as well, where we can see how many people are using WPF and WinForms, see how many people are using Visual Studio 2019, and we can either pull support for those areas, or we can see that a lot of people are using certain like features in SDI and then support improvements to them as well. So this enhancement ultimately allows us to gather valuable data, understand user interactions better, and continuously improve our platform based on actual usage patterns. I highly recommend you opt in if you're not already, so we can keep improving SDI for what works best for you. And anything you're using will stay supported. To further enhance code quality and reduce technical debt, we've integrated SonarQube directly into our automated CI pipelines for static code analysis. So this was something recent that we did. We ran it locally first, but then we ended up setting up a community server and then getting that integrated with our CI pipelines. And overall, this has really helped us track down a lot of older technical debts. So this integration is a crucial step in identifying and addressing code quality issues more efficiently, reducing what we often refer to as crusty code, like during the last conference. This ensures our software maintains the highest standards of reliability and performance. All right, now let's delve into the latest enhancements in SDI that focus on resilience and adapting to Visual Studio updates and strengthening our .NET capabilities. In our effort to maintain stability, we have enhanced our approach to testing and updating SDI with the latest Visual Studio versions. This is an ongoing effort aimed at reducing maintenance between different Visual Studio versions, thus ensuring SDI's resilience and freeing up resources to focus on more innovative features. We are currently aligned with the long-term servicing channel, LTSC, the cycle for Visual Studio. So actively supporting versions 17.2 through 17.8 of Visual Studio 22 right now. This proactive ongoing strategy minimizes the impact of Visual Studio updates on SDI, ensuring a stable and consistent development environment for our users. We're also embracing the advancements in .NET, aligning it with the increased adoption in our language, especially around Harmony Core engagements. While our .NET Synergy project types are functional, we recognize that there are stability challenges due to differences in Visual Studio implementation compared to traditional and .NET Framework project types. To address this, we are expanding our testing efforts and enhancing the SDI extension to better support .NET project types. This ongoing work will not only align us with .NET's evolution, but also simplifies the transition to .NET within Visual Studio, enabling developers to integrate seamlessly and leverage the full potential of .NET's features. All right, this next slide highlights the upcoming enhancements in SDI that are focused on improving both performance and stability. So these are not the things we're currently doing, but these are the things that we are up next. And you can see this if you go to the roadmap on our website as well. we're moving away from the managed package framework and now implementing the Common Project System, or CPS, to significantly enhance the stability of Synergy projects, especially .NET project types within Visual Studio. We've done some prototyping already, but this is something that is still yet to come. The transition to CPS, a system utilized by most other languages for their project systems in Visual Studio, marks our long-term solution to the .NET stability challenges I just mentioned. By adopting CPS, we ensure that our .NET project types benefit from enhanced loading efficiency and reliability. Moreover, the advantages extend beyond just the loading phase. CPS impacts the overall Visual Studio IDE experience as the project state is actively utilized throughout the entire development process. This move not only provides a smoother experience for developers, but also aligns Synergy projects with the broader Visual Studio ecosystem, ensuring consistent and reliable performance. Now, our DevOps infrastructure is also undergoing a comprehensive upgrade to further enhance product quality and streamline our release cycles. We already have some CI/CD set up, but as part of this overhaul, we're expanding our CI/CD to encompass all integrated products, including the compiler. We're planning to improve our virtual machine orchestration, utilizing Linux containers and a cluster system for build agents. This system will efficiently manage our UI VMs and expedite the development process. Additionally, we're enhancing our capability to quickly spin up development nodes and moving towards automating our release process, transitioning fully away from manual deployments. Alongside these enhancements, we're also advancing towards SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, integrating stringent security and privacy practices in line with industry access control standards. These combined efforts are not just about speeding up development and deployment, but also ensuring our infrastructure is secure and compliant, reflecting our commitment to delivering high-quality, trustworthy products to our customers. Now, we're also undertaking a significant modernization of our SDI extension architecture. This process involves a thorough refactoring of legacy code to remove outdated and inefficient coding patterns, or crusty code. By doing this, we're paving the way for the adoption of more current and effective design principles. Furthermore, we're redesigning the SDI extension architecture around the patterns used in the Common Project System. This transition to the Common Project System patterns is crucial, as it aligns SDI with the latest industry standards and practices, ensuring better compatibility and performance within the Visual Studio ecosystem. This architectural overhaul is not just an update, it's a transformation aimed at keeping SDI at the forefront of technology and meeting the evolving demands of Visual Studio. Now, as we look to the future of SDI, there are several exciting enhancements we're aspiring to achieve. While these are not yet fully committed to, our aim is to bring these advancements to reality. We would like to hear more about what you're most interested in later. So please pay some attention here, and we're happy to hear whatever thoughts you have and which areas you would like us to bring into the next sooner than the others. We're exploring the introduction of a .NET multiple mainline project type in Visual Studio. This initiative mirrors the capabilities of our traditional multiple mainline projects, allowing for the construction of multiple DBRs from a single project. The goal is to facilitate the quick migration of source code into Visual Studio from non-Visual Studio environments. The key advantage here is leveraging .NET's robust features and functionalities, including a more seamless transition to Harmony Core. To boost IDE responsiveness, we're focusing on optimizing our compiler performance. This isn't just about speeding up build times. It's about enhancing the entire development workflow. From the moment a project is loaded, our background compile feature kicks in. Every time a file is edited, minimal file analysis is conducted for quick IntelliSense feedback. We're also exploring ways to enable more compiler concurrency, leveraging additional hardware resources to expedite the process. We aim to significantly reduce the time taken for compile operations, thereby making the entire development experience in Visual Studio more efficient and responsive. All right, so those are our first two. Keep in mind the next few. So when you do vote, let's see what people are most interested in. We're planning to enhance the schema editing experience in Visual Studio, which is currently not as efficient as it could be. Our goal is to introduce IntelliSense support along with new snippets. This will offer an alternative method to update your repository schemas, ideally complementing the repository UI. Additionally, we're considering employing the language server protocol as a testbed for potentially replacing our current IntelliSense system. This could open up possibilities for supporting other editors like VS Code. Now, we're also updating the repository UI, focusing on supporting this hybrid schema editing approach. This includes capabilities such as exporting to individual schemas, which will provide developers with more control and flexibility in managing their schemas. And additionally, we're introducing features to launch edits for specific elements, like files or structures, directly from the UI. These improvements are designed to make the repository UI more intuitive and adaptable to various workflow needs, facilitating a seamless integration with the direct schema changes. Now, our last item here is in Visual Studio, we have editor config files, which provide a way to define and maintain consistent coding styles and standards for different projects and solutions. We already have some support around this, but it's not ideal. And ultimately, unlike the Tools Options menu, which applies settings globally across all projects in Visual Studio, editor config allows for project-specific configurations. This means that when a project with an editor config file is opened, Visual Studio automatically applies the coding style specified in the file. This is particularly useful in collaborative environments, as it ensures that everyone working in the project adheres to the exact same coding standards, regardless of their individual Visual Studio settings. We're enhancing the synergy development experience in Visual Studio by also adding comprehensive support for this editor config feature. This addition not only allows for more customized and consistent coding styles, but also tailors these standards to the unique requirements of synergy development. To streamline this process, we're introducing a user interface for editing editor config files directly within Visual Studio. Additionally, we're incorporating synergy-specific formatting options to further refine code style and presentation. Another key feature could be the ability to export settings from the Visual Studio Tools Options menu. Now, those are some of the new coming later features. Feel free to vote. I did ask for a poll to come up sometime around here, so please provide your feedback, and we're happy to take a close look at that and use that for our consideration. And if you have any other ideas or features, make sure you go to the Synergex Resource Center and throw ideas or reach out to our team or support team, and we're happy to get any of your feedback as well. So overall, this concludes our overview of the Synergy DBL integration for Visual Studio Roadmap. We've highlighted key updates and future enhancements aimed at improving efficiency and user experience. We also floated some of these feature enhancement ideas that I would really like to see what has the most support of. So please have your opinions voiced, and thank you so much for your time. So now let's hear from Jeff for more about Harmony Core and Kafka. Thank you.
And here we are in the Harmony Core section of this presentation. So in Harmony Core, we've done about 145 commits in the last year. Most of those have been really focused in enhancing our automated testing. So whenever we do a release, the amount of stuff that we test to ensure we don't break anyone in the field has gone up pretty significantly, to the point now where basically we've automated testing of customer scenarios, but also the tutorial steps. So they get run in an automated fashion all the time, which has definitely made my life a lot easier when we're doing a release, because I don't have to be quite so frantic in chasing down and making sure everything works, because it's all going to be tested automatically. With that, we also put in a fair bit of effort into updating the documentation. So I've talked about the CLI tool and the text-based GUI that goes along with that CLI tool. And the documentation has been updated to reflect the usage of that tool. We think it's a lot more complete in terms of the documentation showing you everything that you need to do. And rather than just covering our initial couple of steps, we've padded that out a bit with more of the functionality that the users are actually using out in the field. A lot of our effort there, you might notice, is kind of focused on, it's not really like new development work that we're doing. We're focused on polishing the bits that make it easier for you to ship into production. So whether that's getting started with your first Harmony Core implementation and how do you get it deployed somewhere that's useful to you in production, or making sure that it's easy to diagnose problems that go wrong when the product is running in a production environment. So good logging, good tracking of information, and good guidance around how to use it. The CLI tool is now our preferred way of handling configuration and running CodeGen. So this has been a long-running kind of operation, trying to fill out how we use CodeGen inside Harmony Core via the region.bat interface. And the CLI tool is now pretty much up to task there. So even some pretty intense customizations that might show up in the bat files for region, they can be replicated from the CLI tool. And when we do that replication in the CLI tool instead, it means that we're sort of protecting ourselves for future versions. Because they're sort of programmatic, they have well-defined APIs inside of those extensions. It means that I don't have to worry about breaking your region.bat if we add a new template. I can control the addition of features a lot easier without being worried about breaking any customizations that you might have in a region.bat. And we also support importing from your existing region.bat. So there's not really a whole lot of stuff that you have to actually do in order to switch from region.bat to using the CLI tool for your config and CodeGen needs. And finally, inside this part of Harmony Core, the main feature that we actually implemented was support for multiple connections to XF Server running inside a single Harmony Core. So that's in production. Some of our customers have solved this themselves by basically running and load balancing multiple copies of their Harmony Core service. And that's fine. But in order to reach sort of better scaling there, we wanted to give them an extra dimension so that they can talk to multiple running processes on the remote XF Server side from a single .NET host on the .NET IIS sort of side where the Harmony Core API is running. You can still load balance that however you want with multiple processes, but it makes it just a little bit easier to get the scale that we want when we're talking particularly to OpenVMS backends. So now on to some very new stuff for us. So this is Apache Kafka. So it is a distributed streaming platform. People use it for all sorts of things. Our particular use case for Kafka is essentially as queue files. So you'll know a lot of Synergy applications will use an ISAM file as a queue, and they'll use either like a timestamp key or an auto sequence key or something along those lines to guarantee ordering, so that you have a queue and you take an item off the queue, you mark it in the ISAM file as processed, and then you move on to the next one. Kafka's sort of made better for that task than an ISAM file is. And so we've started taking advantage of it for our queuing needs. This has a couple of benefits. Big one is it's not proprietary to us. So you get to take advantage of sort of industry standard patterns and knowledge that's floating out there in the world. And I think that's a pretty big benefit. We combine this Kafka work with leveraging sort of the Harmony Core base functionality, so data objects and things that are around data objects, and combining that with the new global I/O hooks functionality And we can use that to capture a lot more about the data flow in your environment than what we've historically done using things like SQL replication. And on that topic of SQL replication, today that sits on top of an ISAM file queue. We're looking at replacing that with Kafka, specifically for SQL replication. And big part of that is it's faster. So the Kafka implementation should end up being more performant. It's got better observability, so you don't have to understand ISAM files in order to look in there and see how your queues are flowing, whether they're being processed appropriately. And they're also more durable. So Kafka is a distributed system, and that means that if something happens to one of your Kafka servers, one of your processing servers that's actually handling whatever this queue is for, then we don't lose information. We don't double process information. So it's just it's a higher safety, higher durability, easier to deal with in a HA kind of environment. So that's SQL replication. Along with this, we're sort of toying around with ISAM replication. So it's like SQL replication, except instead of sending it to SQL Server, you're sending it to a second set of ISAM files somewhere. So this makes backups an awful lot easier because you have very consistent state in your environment on the replicated target. You can just pause the replicator and run your backups, and you'll have nice, good, clean ISAM files. And it's also a lot easier for disaster recovery because you always have a second copy somewhere else of all of your ISAM files, and you can make them transactionally consistent, and they will definitely be sort of ISAM file consistent. So building on top of that, we've done a proof of concept upgrade to the RCC software, where we take advantage of Kafka and this ISAM replication. So what we've come out with there is that this is actually faster. It's highly available. You can run multiple RCC nodes distributed across data center or geo-distributed. And we've essentially started using the ISAM files not as the storage of record, but as like a caching layer for fast lookups. So all the data really lives in S3 buckets and in the Kafka queues. But as far as the application is concerned, it's still working with ISAM files. This lets us be very fast without having to live within the constraints of file system-based databases. And it leaves most of the code untouched. So it's not a drastic change for us in this RCC proof of concept. It's really a couple of wrappers and global I/O hooks doing their magic, and that's most of the work there. This has been made a bit easier in the RCC case because they already separated their read operations from their write operations, and locking is also somewhat separate, so it was easy to split those the rest of the way. Once we did that, we were able to just put in some Harmony Core kind of transactional glue and replace the locking with a distributed lock manager implemented in Console. That's a product from HashiCorp. This whole thing requires .NET 8, and we will probably end up talking about it a lot in the future as we continue to work on it and find ways for it to be useful to all of you. All right, on to developer support with Phil.
All right, let's talk a little bit about developer support. Once again, I'm Phil Bratt, the developer support team lead, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the changes we made to developer support this year. Now, the changes that we have made are all about efficiency, trying to get your case from open to resolved as quickly as possible. And part of that have been changes we've made to our escalation process. Now, this is the process we take from taking a ticket in support and moving it over to the development team. And so as part of that, and in the spirit of efficiency, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can submit to get your resolution as quickly as possible. We'll also talk a little bit about where you can submit those tickets and the changes that have been made there. And then we'll talk a little about other resources that you have that are now on the Resource Center to help you get resolutions you need and solutions that may necessarily not be exactly a support ticket, but also can be helpful in getting your solution. So let's talk a little bit about escalation. So for escalation, we have streamlined the escalation process and are getting it to our development team faster now. As part of that, you will now have direct contact with our development team in a lot of your new tickets that you're going to submit. This kind of helps us out because now our developers can kind of see more directly at how the products that they're working on are being used. You can give feedback directly to them, and also you can get the most accurate information you need, and you can get that resolution all that faster. And so, in the spirit of cooperation on that, let's talk a little bit about kind of tips you can do when you're submitting your support cases that help us out and get your resolution faster. Now, I don't know about you, but when I look at submitting a technical ticket that I have been working on for years and haven't really or have been working on for some time, and I don't really think about, I'm like, what do they need to know? What do they need to know to get them up to speed on this? So here's a little bit of tips and tricks on that. So if it's a problem, an error message and a full trace back, the full stack trace would really help us understand the problem better. If you have a question, more context about what you're working on. You'll find that context is mostly the underlying thing behind all this. So what kind of product or project are you working on? Are you trying to add new features? Is this new code? Are you just doing a migration? It kind of goes into just more context about what you're doing, because this helps us to avoid the XY problem where you're like, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to do X, but really you're trying to figure out a solution for Y. And so telling us a little more about what the overall picture is really helps us in understanding what giving you the best information possible on that resolution. If it's a bug, any steps on patterns or anything you see to reproduce the problem would be great. It doesn't necessarily have to be a full step-by-step guide on it or even a test case to do it, but any information about hey, I've noticed that when we do this happens. Anything like that is highly appreciated. Then, of course, providing the full version of Synergy and operating systems. Now, with this, remember there are multiple machines involved sometimes, especially with its XF Server Plus, or any of the connectivity series. So keep that in mind. And also with Synergy, do keep in mind with the SDE, we have made a change with 12.1 and 12.2 that it now includes a build version. So make sure you get that build version in there so we know what features you have and that you are working with when you submit these tickets. And of course, overall, for any of the context, what has changed recently? Is this new code? Have you just made a change from versions of Synergy, OSs, anything like that? Any of the changes that might help us get more clues as the context of what might be going on is going to help speed on your case that much faster to getting it resolved. So let's talk about a little bit about what else you can do to get prepared for submitting a case. If it is a migration, there are the release notes available on the website, on the Resource Center. So there's a link there. If it's maybe you have moved machines and you're going through the configuration again, looking through the documentation, we have some great step-by-step guides on there on here's the steps you need to take to configure this. And you can kind of tell us which step you got stuck on, which one's not working. And that helps us know exactly like what needs to be happening next on those, like where in the process you are. And of course, there are also previous cases. So if someone else has submitted the same thing from your company, or this has already happened and there was a resolution before, you don't really quite remember how it got resolved last time, you can look through your previous cases or the previous cases of your company to find those solutions. This is also a place where you can submit cases. So you can submit cases through the Resource Center now. And I'll kind of demo a little bit more of that in a second about submitting cases and looking at cases. And then, of course, other ways to reach us is email, which is a great way for you to put information, especially if it's highly technical, into a written form so that we have it in front of us. Or you can always call us. Once again, if it is technical, a good little tip here is you could always email us with that technical information and then call us to work through that problem. If you don't get us right away, make sure you leave a message, and we'll be able to get back to you as soon as possible. And so let's go over a little bit about looking at previous cases and submitting cases over the Resource Center. So let me switch over to that. So over here on the Resource Center, you have support. So if you click on support, you can go into your cases. And so in cases, you can go and filter here through your company's cases. You can do cases specifically that you've submitted, but this is a great resource for looking through cases. You can even do closed or open ones to kind of see like, hey, I think someone else had this problem. I think they talked to you guys, like, and you can reference even the case number of the previous case that, or if it's like a continuation, you can reference it. Also, you can create new cases here. The reason I like cases through here is because it gives you like those fields to fill out. So then you remember like, oh, right, I need to include this, what the product is and what the version is of all that. And then it kind of gives you this step-by-step of like, here's how to submit that. So this is really cool. And we've made some improvements here of like getting better information, asking better questions on that. So that's the Resource Center for submitting cases and looking through previous ones. So back to our slides. Some other resources that aren't necessarily related to your support cases, but are useful resources for getting solutions you need. Code Exchange is now on GitHub. So if you've used Code Exchange before, it's a place where we keep a repository of code that's been submitted through the years. That someone was like, hey, this might be useful to other people. And so this is now available on GitHub. So you can go to GitHub and you can copy those repositories through Git. And I'll show a little bit about the changes that have been made to Code Exchange there. Don't forget our answers. This is for things like, hey, I'm sure other people have ran into this. I'm transitioning from like, this to this, like to the cloud or something. Like what kind of, I need some answers to this, but it's not exactly like Synergy directly. This is a great place for it because you've got everyone else who has Resource Center accounts that can contribute. You can look through there and you can give people some answers, or you can ask some of your own. And don't forget always our ideas site for improvements that, it's not necessarily a bug, but it's like, hey, this would be great to have because, I'm trying to accomplish this and be great if this product could do that. That is the place for that. So do keep in mind you have those resources available to you as well through the Resource Center. So let's talk about just do a quick overview of the migration of Code Exchange into the new Resource Center. So if we go over here, back to the Resource Center, we go over to Community. You can see that you got your answers, ideas, and now we have Code Exchange. This is just like before. You can kind of see your Code Exchange here, and you can do a search, but you can also go directly to the GitHub pages of those Code Exchange. If you hit GitHub here, it's the link I had before, and it's got a list of all of these projects that have been submitted through Code Exchange that you can you can copy, you can download, and do it that way. And so now you have everything through GitHub. So really cool. And you can look at all this if you're more used to the GitHub experience for Code Exchange. So just want to show that because it's a cool improvement that we have made to Code Exchange and getting that sample code to you. So I think that about covers everything that we have made for changes. And we'll go back to the group. Thank you.
We have some questions already to get us started. And the first one is for you, Phil. When should I send something into answers, and when should it be a support ticket?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for answers versus support, the underlying real issue, the underlying thing is actually we will look at both, and so we will monitor answers and your tickets at the same time. And if it's if we feel like you're better resourced on the answers, we can always suggest going over there. Really, it just comes down to how much synergy is involved in your decision, because a lot of the themes that happen on answers is we're all in kind of similar businesses. We all are started with synergy code and are trying to get to other places, utilize the synergy code, and we try our best here to help you get where you need to be with our products. And so really it's just if you feel like it's some general advice that could be useful, you can go there. But really, it's the secret is we're looking at both of them. So thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Joel. I see your question in there, and I'm gonna kind of probably answer that when I get into a little preview of our conference plans for next year. So, thank you for submitting that. This next question is for Marty. What did I need to do, or what do I need to do to take advantage of the select performance changes?
Oh, that's a great question. You don't need to do anything. As long as you are on the newer version of the runtime, you will benefit from the select performance enhancements that we've made.
Perfect. Easy answer. The next question is for Jeff. What are the security implications of using Kafka instead of ISAM files in the SQL replicator?
Yeah, so there aren't significant security implications. So Kafka is capable of doing encryption in transit and encryption while stored, depending on the edition and which product you're using and how you've configured it. So the level of security there is plenty high, and there's authorization, usernames and passwords, and various ways to authenticate against Kafka. So we think it's really just an upgrade in security to store data there.
Thanks, Jeff. So I've got a question from Dion that I think is for Tim. Will SonarQube have integration to analyze synergy code?
That's a good question, Dion. I actually was talking to Jeff about this earlier. We are evaluating some internal tools that can offer this, but we don't have anything publicly facing yet. But this is something we have been looking at and working on. So stay tuned.
Anyone out there that's interested in that,
that's right,
please let us know that you're interested in that sort of functionality so that we can appropriately scope, how urgent this should be, how much interest there is overall in the user base. Just please tell us.
Asks, did I understand correctly that Kafka ISAM to ISAM replication requires no coding changes in DBL, like writing global IO hooks?
So replication of ISAM to ISAM as opposed to ISAM to SQL requires the same hooks setup as ISAM to SQL. It's not really different. It lives on top of the same conceptual tech stack. We intercept your IO operations using the IO hooks, and that's how we determine basically what's going on in order to replicate that stuff. So it's not completely transparent, but if you have SQL replication today, doing replication to ISAM files would be transparent. So if you're already doing replication, would just be a different target you could have.
Thanks, Jeff. This is a hot topic. Another question about this from Tim Laverne. Jeff, will you guys be providing the DBL interfaces to Kafka, or will we have to build our own for uses outside of the ones you listed?
So right now, the delivery vehicle for Kafka, I assume, Tim, you're talking rather specifically about OpenVMS. That space is different, just a smidge different than Linux or Windows. There is VSI has a librd Kafka thing. It's a C library that can be called. Not particularly ergonomic for Synergy users. So when we do this for SQL replication, there's going to be some C code that you have to build on your system and run against. I believe you'll get that code from us. So if you're doing SQL replication or interested in that, you can get that code from us when it's ready. So if you wanted to modify it, you could, but the DBL C to DBL layer that we're talking about there would be specific to our SQL replication use case. So it's not we're not writing wrappers for all of Kafka. We're writing functionality appropriate interfaces that do more than one thing per call.
Thanks, Jeff. And back to Joel's question, will there be an upcoming demo of Rocket with RCC? We can do a one-off for anybody that's interested in seeing that. But one thing I did want to mention before we go is that we are planning a short virtual conference next spring. It will be a similar format to our previous virtual conferences in that we'll have a couple sessions each morning, but this is going to span 1 week instead of 2. Because the following spring in 2025, we're planning an in-person conference in conjunction with Synergex's new owner and their other business units. So we'll provide more information about our spring conference early next year, and obviously about the 2025 in-person conference later next year. We, just for all of my international friends, we will also be planning a virtual in 2025 as well, but we'll have an in-person too. So really hope more before then because there's already a demo. So after you leave this webinar, you should receive a very short survey. Please take a minute to fill that out and let us know if this webinar was valuable to you and if we can anything that we can do to improve future webinars. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We're glad we had this opportunity to connect with you. And if you have any further questions or if there's anything we can do to assist you, please be sure to let us know. And thanks to our presenters again.